The film District 9 navigates the complexity of the apartheid and how it affected the victims of the political movement. Through the use of character development, set design, and the other, this film is able to successfully demonstrate the horrid policies and condemn the very people who pushed for the apartheid without misrepresenting the victims and allowing both the audience and the characters to come to truly understand how terrible the apartheid was. First, to understand what this film represents, we must first understand the apartheid. The apartheid was a political movement that aimed to gentrify the majority of South Africa and give land to white Africans over black and other Africans of color. This led to many of the vast injustices that black and other Africans of color had to endure from 1900 to about 1991. This type of discrimination eventually led to many other legislations, like the Population Registration Act No. 30 of 1950, which made racial classification on the National Registry compulsory. These, among other laws, enabled the kind of discrimination against Africans of color to occur, the very same discrimination that we see presented in the film District 9. The first noticeable thing about this film is the use of the white protagonist, who is then transformed into the other by a mistake. The protagonist of this film is named Wikus van de Moor. He is a pencil pusher within the organization Multinational United, or MNU for short. There isn't really anything too special about Wikus, except he happens to be married to Tanya, the daughter of the president of MNU. When we first see Wikus, we see him at his desk. We see that he is just like any other human on earth. He is an honest, hardworking man who is happily married to the love of his life. The only difference is he happens to work for the company, MNU, that is responsible for helping the aliens in District 9. What first begins as a lively mission for him and a brave attempt to document the evictions turns into the catalyst for both his physical and moral change. When first in District 9, it is very clear where Wikus stands. He detests aliens and what they stand for. He talks about them not very nicely, both to their face and to the man accompanying him. It is clear that he does not regard them as equals. Wikus truly believes that aliens to be inferior to him. We can see this in the scene where he talks about the aliens and even in the way he casually regards them as less than him. However, this attitude begins to change after he is taken into the MNU labs after he is taken to the hospital. When he is woken up, he is tortured and he begins to realize that what is happening to him is not okay. However, he doesn't truly realize that he is now the other until he begs his father-in-law not to let him die, and his father-in-law ignores him anyway.
I'll handle that. Okay, I say let's go. Good, thank you.
I don't understand. None of this makes any sense. He just hurt his arm, Dad.
After Wikus escapes, we also see that he is no longer human. The MNU begins to send out accusations of Wikus having sex with an alien, and implying that this is what caused his transformation. However, Wikus' transformation is not complete. When he meets Chris in his half-transformed state, he still liberally uses racial slurs like prawn, still manages to patronize them while talking to them about fixing his condition. However, when Chris's child says, "We are the same," Wikus immediately gets angry and says that we are not.
Why does he keep looking at me like that? Fuck off, man. It's not the same. It's not the fucking same.
Go to the MNU to try and get the black liquid back. And we see how horrified Chris is at the revelation of the MNU labs. And we see Wikus trying to convince Chris to leave, bringing his son into it as well, proving that Wikus did care, and attempts to rationalize with Chris. Not
Think of your boy, for fuck's sake!
to mention that after this mission, Wikus strictly refers to his alien partner as Chris. Not prawn, not alien, but Chris. However, we don't see the final transformation until Wikus risks his life and his humanity and he lets Chris leave with the only possibility of a cure he has. The aspect of this film that needs to be taken into account is the clever set design used to convey the kind of segregation that humans and aliens live by. You may ask yourself, why is the set design in this film, and by extension in any film, so important? Well, the set design helps tell the audience what is going on in the world of the film without having to spend any time on it. For instance, in the beginning of the film, we see a short sequence of signs that say no aliens, humans only, etc. This little sequence shows us how divided the world is for the aliens and the humans, demonstrating just how otherized Africans of color were during the apartheid. In this film, the set design serves as a clever way to demonstrate how the relations between the aliens and the humans have deteriorated, and how the MNU has helped shape the public opinion against the aliens. When we first see Wickes, we see him at his job, and this building looks like any other government building. Specifically, it reminds me of the offices that workers have to work in places like Social Security or the DMV, for instance. Places where they are overworked and underappreciated. This shows how dire the situation is with the aliens, and even those who are working with the aliens are not given enough resources to properly address their needs, which enables a sort of bitterness towards the other to occur. A sharp contrast to the house that Wickes lives in. Clearly, his life is idyllic. He has a nice house with a beautiful wife who clearly loves him, and the life they have built together. This contrast serves to show how terrible the treatment of the aliens is, especially because the moment Wickes begins to transform, he is no longer allowed into his home. There are police waiting for him in case he shows up. A reference to the racist policies that disenfranchise Black Africans from purchasing land in certain areas of South Africa. The contrast of Wickes' old life with the life he must live now as an alien is what is most poignant about this film. Without having to say anything, it is clear what this means. The treatment of the aliens, i.e. the Africans of color, was horrendous and inhumane. It is clear that the South African government treated the Africans of color like garbage during the apartheid. So much so that while the white Africans lived in wonderful and nice suburbs, Black and Africans and other Africans of color were forced to live in camps that resembled the Fire Festival. Only these folks were forced to live there for generations. The final aspect of the set design is a clever use of the city to create the realistic atmosphere, which created a realistic world. We can believe the aliens actually landed on Earth because the world they live in is so realistic. The final aspect of this film that creates the most heartbreaking point is the use of the alien to create the other in this film. In many science fiction films or shows, the others, who are typically aliens, robots, or any form of non-human, are meant to represent the humans that have been ostracized and been labeled as not deserving of equal treatment. And District 9 is no different. Many films have utilized this for good and bad, depending on exactly how the film is cast. For instance, shows like Star Trek did a good job at balancing the use of others and humans by having both a racially diverse cast with an equally diverse set of others. What this did was help empathize the plight of people of color by both distancing them from the audience and also having them as part of the audience, demonstrating that although these stories are fictional and what these characters are going through is fictional, the inhumane treatment that they represent is not fictional, and it's not as fictional as the audience and the writers would like it to be. In District 9, at first glance, it may seem like the aliens are just that, aliens. But until one can see who the aliens represent, the whole picture starts to form. It is clear that aliens are the people of Africa the government disenfranchised for decades. Even the MNU stands in for the ANU party that started the apartheid. The fact that the father-in-law of Wickes was willingly able to let him die and lie to his daughter, all in the name of profit, demonstrates the cruelty the apartheid did to the Africans. They were treated as less than human, forced to live in encampments just like the ones in the film, and forced to live in abject poverty with no access to any kind of amenity that would have helped them out of that poverty. It is clear that Wickes' transformation is not only meant to transform Wickes and have him realize that he and Chris aren't so different. It is meant to have the same impact on the audience as well. Keeping all of this in mind, it is clear what the message of this film is. By having hope for a better future and making the difficult choices in life, we can actually have a better future for everyone. In other words, when we treat others the way we want to be treated, things like the apartheid, the Jim Crow law, and what is happening now with the US-Mexico border would not happen, because we would not let it happen.